Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we are diving deep into an explosive diplomatic clash between former US President Donald Trump and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, a confrontation that's once again thrown South Africa's land reform policies and racial tensions into the global spotlight. If you're interested in international politics, South African affairs, or just want to understand what's really going on behind the headlines, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Now let's get into the story. During a high-stakes meeting at the White House, Donald Trump confronted President Ramaphosa on a series of highly controversial topics. The flashpoint. Trump's recurring accusation that white South African farmers are victims of what he calls a white genocide. According to Trump, South Africa is intentionally targeting white landowners through violent crime, property expropriation, and what he describes as hateful rhetoric from government officials and activists alike. This isn't the first time Trump has spoken on this issue. During his presidency, Trump raised eyebrows when he tweeted that the U.S. State Department would be closely watching South Africa's land reform efforts. He accused the ANC-led government of forcibly taking land from white farmers without compensation, painting a picture of racial persecution that outraged many in South Africa and around the world. But the South African government has consistently denied these claims, and Ramaphosa took this opportunity at the White House to do exactly that, forcefully. According to the South African delegation, Trump's remarks not only misrepresent the facts but dangerously oversimplify the country's complex and painful history. Let's not forget, South Africa is still grappling with the long and brutal legacy of apartheid, a system where the white minority systematically disenfranchised and dispossessed the black majority. Land reform, in that context, is not about revenge or racial persecution, but about correcting historical injustices that date back centuries. President Ramaphosa is said to have pushed back firmly, reminding Trump that while South Africa's murder rates are tragically high, the vast majority of victims are black South Africans, not white. This is backed up by official statistics. Yes, white farmers do face violent attacks, and yes, crime in rural areas is a serious issue. But to label it genocide is not just inaccurate, it's inflammatory. And this is where the situation becomes even more sensitive. Trump's comments weren't made in a vacuum. They echo a narrative that has become increasingly popular among far-right groups in the US, Europe, and Australia, a narrative that claims white South Africans are being ethnically cleansed. These claims have been widely debunked by human rights organizations, journalists, and South Africa's own crime statistics. But when a former US president repeats them, the consequences can be global. The South African government, and Ramaphosa in particular, now find themselves in a very tricky position. On one hand, they must defend the country's land reform agenda, an initiative that is both legally sanctioned and morally necessary for post-apartheid justice. On the other hand, they must navigate growing international scrutiny, fueled by populist rhetoric and misinformation. And the strain is showing. Diplomatic relations between the US and South Africa have hit their lowest point since the end of apartheid in 1994. Analysts suggest that this clash could have long-term consequences for trade, foreign investment, and even military cooperation. South Africa is trying to position itself as a key player in the global South, but Trump's narrative, if it gains traction again under a potential second term, could isolate the country from Western allies. But let's look beyond the politics for a moment. This story isn't just about two presidents disagreeing at the White House. It's about the dangerous power of misinformation, and how quickly a complex issue like land reform can be hijacked by political agendas. It's about how centuries of colonial violence are still shaping the present, not just in South Africa, but in how the rest of the world perceives South Africa. For instance, the issue of expropriation without compensation, a policy the ANC and EFF have pushed for, is portrayed in the West as a radical seizure of property. But in reality, it's a constitutional process aimed at undoing land dispossession caused by colonial conquest. In many cases, these lands were taken with no legal purchase, no compensation, and no consent. Now, South Africa is trying to fix that. But the process is being framed, by Trump and others, as racist, Marxist, and chaotic. It's important to recognize that many South Africans, especially black and indigenous citizens, still live without secure land tenure. Many remain landless or stuck in overcrowded informal settlements. So when politicians like Trump call land reform theft, they are not just ignoring this history, they are actively distorting it. Ramaphosa, to his credit, tried to explain this during the meeting. He urged Trump to engage with facts, not fearmongering. He reminded him that South Africa remains a constitutional democracy, governed by the rule of law. And he emphasized that reconciliation and restitution, not retribution, are at the heart of South Africa's transformation journey. But whether that message landed with Trump is still unclear. What we do know is this: the world is watching. And moments like these matter. They shape perceptions. They influence policy. And they either build bridges or deepen divides. So where does this leave us? For South Africans, this moment is a reminder that the global stage is never neutral. Foreign leaders, even former ones, will always have their own agendas. And as we approach a future of growing global polarization, South Africa must continue to assert its sovereignty, defend its democratic institutions, and tell its own story, not allow others to define it through a lens of racial paranoia. And for those of us watching from the outside, it's a moment to reflect, to ask, are we listening to South Africans, or are we letting others speak over them? Are we understanding the past, or are we repeating it through distorted narratives? That's it for today's deep dive. If you found this content valuable, please hit the like button, subscribe for more political analysis, and share your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about Trump's accusations? Do you believe they were based on concern, or something more political? Thanks for watching, and as always, see you next time.